Hello and welcome to MagicMingle. On this channel, we take timeless stories and retell them in modern English to help you improve your language skills. Whether you're learning English or just enjoy classic literature, you're in the right place. Today, we're exploring Anton Chekhov's classic story, The Chemist's Wife. This thought-provoking tale is about a young woman who is married to an older, dull pharmacist. She feels trapped in her monotonous life, and one night, she encounters two officers who come into the shop. Their visit stirs something within her, a brief spark of excitement and longing for more in life. As the evening unfolds, she's left questioning her own happiness and reflecting on the loneliness she faces in her marriage. Here's a quick summary of the story. The young chemist's wife, feeling restless and bored in her marriage, gets a glimpse of the attention and passion she craves when two officers stop by the shop one night. Their brief but flirtatious encounter leaves her feeling even more discontented with her life, realizing just how unhappy and lonely she truly is. The story highlights themes of emotional isolation, longing, and unfulfilled desires. In this modern retelling, we've updated the language to make it easier to understand while preserving the original plot and emotions that Chekhov captured so well. So, sit back, follow along, and let this story help you practice your English and dive into the depths of human emotions. Stay with us until the end, and don't forget to subscribe for more classic stories in modern English right here on MagicMingle. It was late at night in the small town of B, where only 2 or 3 crooked streets made up the quiet settlement. The air was still, with no sound except the distant barking of a dog far outside the town. It was almost dawn, and the town was fast asleep. But not everyone was sleeping. The young wife of Chernomordic, the pharmacist who owned the town's chemist shop, lay awake. She had gone to bed and gotten up several times, but sleep refused to come. She didn't know why she felt so restless. Dressed in her nightgown, she sat at the open window, staring out into the empty street. She felt bored, irritated, and unsettled, so much so that tears threatened to come, though she didn't know why. There was a lump in her chest, pushing up into her throat. Behind her, Chernomordic, her husband, lay snoring softly, curled up against the wall. A flea bit at his nose, but he didn't even feel it. He was smiling in his sleep, dreaming that the whole town had developed coughs and was lining up at his shop to buy his famous King of Denmark's cough drops. Even the loudest noise couldn't have woken him now. The chemist's shop was near the edge of the town, giving his wife a view far into the fields beyond. She watched as the eastern horizon began to lighten, turning from pale gray to a deep red, as if there were a fire burning far in the distance. The large moon slowly appeared from behind the trees, its face broad and red, blushing as it rose higher into the sky. Suddenly, the silence was broken by footsteps and the jingle of spurs. She could hear voices approaching. That must be the officers coming back from the police captain's house, she thought. 2 figures appeared, dressed in white uniforms, one tall and broad, the other thinner and shorter. They walked slowly, dragging their feet as they talked loudly to each other. As they passed the chemist's shop, they slowed down even more and glanced up at the windows. It smells like a chemist's shop, said the thinner one. Oh yeah, I remember now. I was here last week to buy castor oil. The chemist here has such a sour face and a jaw that looks like it came straight from an old-time anatomy model. The tall one rumbled in a deep voice. The pharmacist is asleep, no doubt. And his wife must be sleeping too. She's a pretty one, Obtyasov. I've seen her, replied the thin officer, Obtyasov. She's very lovely. But tell me, doctor, can a woman like that really love a guy with a face like his? Can she? No, I doubt she does, sighed the doctor, his tone almost sympathetic. She's probably lying there right now, tossing and turning in the heat, with her mouth slightly open, her foot hanging off the bed. And that fool of a chemist has no idea how lucky he is. He probably doesn't know the difference between a woman and a bottle of carbolic acid. Hey doctor, said Obtyasov, stopping suddenly, let's go in and buy something. Maybe we'll see her. In the middle of the night? What are you thinking? They're obligated to serve customers any time, day or night. Come on, let's go in. If you insist, the doctor replied. The chemist's wife had been hiding behind the curtain, listening to their conversation. As she glanced at her husband, still snoring blissfully, she quickly threw on her dress, slipped into her shoes, and hurried to the shop. Through the glass door, she could see their shadows. Heart pounding, she turned up the lamp, hurried over, and opened the door. Now she could see them clearly. The doctor was heavy-set and dark-skinned, with a thick beard. He moved slowly, and with each step, it seemed his tight uniform might burst at the seams. The officer, Obtyasov, was clean-shaven, fair-skinned and slender, with a face as smooth as a whip. "What can I get for you?" she asked, holding her dress tightly across her chest. "Give us, 4 pennyworth of peppermint lozenges," the doctor requested. She turned to the shelves and carefully weighed out the lozenges. The two men stared at her intently as she worked, the doctor squinting like a contented cat, while Obtyasov looked serious and thoughtful. "I've never seen a woman working in a chemist's shop before," remarked the doctor. "There's nothing unusual about it," she replied, glancing briefly at Obtyasov. "My husband doesn't have an assistant, so I help him out." "Ah, I see. You have a charming little shop here. And so many different jars. Aren't you afraid of working around all those poisons?" The chemist's wife sealed the lozenges and handed them to the doctor, who passed the money to Obtyasov. For a moment, nobody spoke. The men looked at each other, then took a step toward the door, pausing again. "Could you give me 2 pennyworth of baking soda as well?" the doctor asked. Once more, the chemist's wife reached for the shelf, moving slowly and deliberately. "Do you have anything else?" Obtyasov began. "Something refreshing, like seltzer water?" "Yes," she replied. "Fantastic. You're a miracle worker. Let's have 3 bottles." The chemist's wife quickly wrapped up the soda and disappeared into the back to fetch the seltzer. She returned a few moments later, flushed from the cellar, with 5 bottles. Her heart was still racing. "Shoo, be quiet," Obtyasov whispered as she dropped the corkscrew. You don't want to wake your husband. So what if I wake him? She replied, with a slight smile. He must be dreaming sweet dreams about you right now. The doctor hiccuped after taking a sip of seltzer. Husbands are boring, he said. It'd be better if they were always asleep. A splash of red wine would really improve this water. What an idea, the chemist's wife laughed. It would be perfect. Too bad chemist shops don't sell wine. Though, you really should sell it as medicine. Do you have any red wine? Yes, we do. Great. Bring us some. We'll mix it with the seltzer. How much do you want? Enough to fill our glasses. After that, we'll see. The doctor and Obtyasov sat down at the counter, took off their caps, and began drinking. The doctor wrinkled his nose. This wine is terrible. But in the presence of such company, it tastes like nectar. Madam, you are enchanting. I imagine kissing your hand right now. I'd give anything to kiss it for real, said Obtyasov, his voice softening. I swear, I'd give my life. That's enough of that, the chemist's wife said, her face turning red, trying to sound serious. What a flirt you are, the doctor teased, winking at her. Your eyes are shooting bullets. Bam bam. You've conquered us. We surrender. The chemist's wife looked at their glowing faces, their playful banter making her feel lively and carefree. She joined in their conversation, laughed, flirted, and even, after much encouragement, drank 2 ounces of wine herself. You officers should come in from the camp more often, she said. It's so dull here. I'm dying of boredom. I bet you are, the doctor agreed. A beauty like you, stuck out here in the middle of nowhere. Like Griboidov said, sent off to the wilderness, to Saratov. But we should get going now. It was wonderful meeting you. How much do we owe? The chemist's wife paused, thinking for a moment. 12 rubles and 48 kopecks. Obtyasov pulled out a thick wallet, fumbled through the notes, and paid. Your husband is still fast asleep. Dreaming about you, no doubt, he murmured, giving her hand a gentle squeeze as they prepared to leave. I don't like hearing silly comments like that, she said firmly. Silly? Not at all. Remember, Shakespeare said, happy is he who in his youth is young. Let go of my hand, she demanded, though without much conviction. Finally, after more banter and one last kiss on the hand, the 2 men left the shop, walking out into the cool night air as if they were forgetting something. The chemist's wife hurried back to her room and sat down by the window again. From there, she watched the 2 men walk slowly down the street, whispering to each other as they went. What were they talking about? Her heart raced, and her temples throbbed. Why did she feel this way? It was as if the men were deciding her fate. 5 minutes later, the doctor and Obtyasov parted ways. Obtyasov lingered, pacing in front of the shop, stopping near the door, but then taking a few steps away, as if unsure. Eventually, the bell rang softly. What is it now? Her husband's voice grumbled suddenly. The bell rang, and you didn't hear it? Is this how you run things? Still half asleep, he stumbled out of bed, pulled on his dressing gown, and shuffled toward the shop. "What do you need?" he asked Obtyasov. "4 pennyworth of peppermint lozenges," Obtyasov replied casually. Yawning and rubbing his eyes, the chemist reached for the jar on the shelf, moving slowly as sleep threatened to overtake him. A few minutes later, the chemist's wife watched as Obtyasov left the shop and tossed the packet of lozenges onto the dusty road. The doctor emerged from around the corner, and the 2 men met up, gesturing as they disappeared into the misty morning. "How miserable I am," the chemist's wife muttered, glaring at her husband, who was already crawling back into bed. "So miserable." She broke into bitter sobs. "And no one even knows. No one. I left 4 kopecks on the counter," the chemist mumbled, pulling the blanket over himself. "Put it in the till." He was asleep again in an instant.
Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe and share our channel Magic Mingle with your friends to enjoy more magical stories.